I've never seen something like this. Bill Maher's latest appearance on The View shows that the modern far left is more than willing to turn on each other the moment someone falls out of line, and this time Bill said the quiet part out loud during a discussion on what woke even means, getting Sunny Hostin and the rest of the panel worked up every passing minute. But I think more than that, perhaps this debate reveals the massive rift that has been produced between the classical liberals of yesterday and the neoliberals of today, where the former is almost reminiscent of centrist or center-right positions just after a few decades ago. There's a lot we need to get into after you watch this next clip.
Well, I had a different question, but it struck me that in the first segment you used the term woke, and you said that woke is what was sort of ruining everything. And I know that you're...
No, I didn't say ruining everything. I said that's why Trump could get reelected.
That's why Trump could get reelected.
Yeah.
So the term woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right and weaponized and bastardized. And so I was surprised to hear you use the term, because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the Black community to note that we must be aware of social injustices.
Want to call it the super far left, but don't tell me the left
Or maybe the super far right.
What? Why would you even bring that up when you're fully aware of Bill Maher's stringent opposition to the far right in the United States? That's nothing more than a way to derail the conversation from the actual subject, which is a modern far left that is drifting further from the center with the passing of time. Now, the word woke is kind of like the word social justice, because there's really nothing you can see with them wrong on the surface. What's wrong is when you see people being awake to societal problems or wanting justice in society. It's only when you dig deeper that you realize the modern idea of woke as a collective and intersectional view of society and social justice refers to the fight against those systems and institutions on the basis of those group collectives. I think none of the hosts or guests on this panel need to be taught the very real dangers of the far right, so we can put that to the side for a moment. The real contention here is a classic liberal like Bill Maher, apparently relatively right-wing from the perspective of a leftist that has gone too far from the political center, and that's exactly what this next debate examples.
We talked about that. I mean, I think we agree about the danger of the super far right, and I can't say it enough. I think they're the bigger threat. But don't tell me that the left hasn't changed. Mm-hmm. I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated the Jews.
Yeah.
Okay. That was a joke. But,
too dark.
Well, maybe it is, but it's true. I mean, if I had any doubt that I was right about the change that's happened in the left, watching people protest for a terrorist organization like that straightened me up pretty quick.
There's certainly no denying the fact that the political poles have moved further apart, but on the issue of the current raging conflict in the Middle East, perhaps there's a few caveats to remember. For one, much of the conversation opposition to America's greatest Middle Eastern ally in history has either come from the religious camp with their biblical accounts of historical religious conflicts, or the political isolationist camp that decried American involvement in foreign conflicts before it had solved its problems at home. Those are not necessarily the same as the modern left's opposition, even through fringes on the both sides can veer off into the territory of anti-Semitism. And just to give the devil his due, the current protests we're seeing have less to do with supporting any terrorist movement and more in support of innocent Palestinians caught up in the conflict, over 30,000 of whom have already passed away. It's easy in conflicts like this to paint either side with a broad brush, and one of the many important starting points to understanding this conflict is that members of any organization that are not the same as 2 million Palestine civilians, that's the dangerous conflation that Alyssa Farah-Griffin made here.
I wanted to ask you about that because I think you're almost a free speech absolutist. You believe totally in the right to say what you believe, but I think a lot of us were disturbed to see terrorist flags being waved on American college campuses and seeing this a generation that some I think genuinely care about the plight of the Palestinians. I think most Americans do, but some who seem to be embracing a terrorist organization over the nation of Israel. What do you make of this moment? What do you think it's a result of? How do we fix it?
Well, I mean, it's just astounding to me that they can't tell the good guys from the bad guys. I mean, just morally. I mean, let me tell you, if you're for Hamas, just live in Gaza for a day. And I'm not talking about while the war is on. I mean, before the war. Trust me, you would go running and screaming and begging to live in Tel Aviv.
The answer to Alyssa's question is this. The conflict in the Middle East will have to be taken away from just two antagonistic parties by getting international peace partners from both sides on board. The current extremist regime in Palestine will have to be dislodged and will give even their own people the respite they desperately need. Bill Maher's repeatedly spoken about something that not enough people seem to mention, which is the people caught up in the conflict. need to be given something to live for. The start of that is, of course, by getting rid of the regime that has taken hold on not only the way that people serve, fuel their recruitment, and create more extremists with nothing to lose. The second and most important step then is to create some semblance of a functioning economy.
Are you at all concerned about the innocent civilians that have been collectively punished and murdered, largely children and women? And are you at all concerned about the fact that the International Criminal Court just today issued a subpoena for Bibi Netanyahu?
Well, that's ridiculous, but it's a war.
Why?
It's a war. Because it's a war, and they were attacked, and they're defending themselves. Now, this is a war. Do you think Hamas needs to be destroyed? This is the question.
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
So how can we do that with a ceasefire?
All right. So Hamas needs to be destroyed because they are a terrorist organization who say openly that they want to commit genocide on the Jewish people, on the state of Israel. That's what from the river to the sea means.
Interestingly enough, Sunny Hostin, as a lawyer herself, doesn't have her facts straight since the subpoenas were only requested by the International Criminal Court and not granted. But even apart from that, this is an issue that has the entire international community divided between the middle, both from different conceptions of who's morally superior, who's the one fighting just the war. But when this happens, every action like the one that the ICC is taking or any directive from the United Nations is seen with an eye of suspicion. That's evident from the fact that you look at the conservatives' online news coverage. You realize that trust in these large international corporation bodies have dwindled to the point of being diminished. Speaking of which, I think it's fair to say that much of that has to do with the narrative control, not just in the online world, but also in mainstream media. The current conflict is one of the greatest stirs for this war of narratives, but another big one in America's domestic politics is the upcoming election in November. Both of these generate large news cycles and reveal how much of the mainstream media is interested in anything but telling people the objective truth. On this, Joy Behar made a pretty stark admission to Bill Maher that gives you a window into how The View covers news stories at large. Watch Joy say it out loud how she self-censors on criticizing the Biden presidency for the supposed ammo it could give to Trump, prompting a fitting response from Bill Maher.
I'm nervous about saying anything against Biden because I feel, not that I have so much power, and you have some more than I do, obviously, but
I don't know about that.
Are you afraid that you might, influence people who are on the fence?
I think you lose all credibility. I do. I mean, my bond with my audience has always been I don't pull a punch.
Yeah.
My bond with my audience is you're not going to like everything I say, but I'm saying what I really think is true.
Right.
That's.
That's just a small example of the temptation that exists to twist narratives by leaving out news or covering events in different ways. Maybe it should serve as a small example that you really can't take narratives on the media wholesale and you need to have a healthy degree of cynicism for everything you're told. But if Bill Maher's presence on this panel reveals anything, it's that the distance between the liberals of yesterday and the liberals of today has increased tremendously, and you see that reflected in every issue or debate that you can trace over the last decades.